Today on the Comicstorian channel, an evil version of Deadpool is traveling through the multiverse to find out how to kill himself. This is the Comicstorian channel where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. I basically give you a synopsis of the storyline so that you can go out and get more context by buying the issues or get the next issue and know what's going on. We make slight alterations to the panel text and images so that we can prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be doing another redux or remix or however you want to hear it. A long time ago, we did Deadpool Killustrated, which is a storyline that follows up from Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. You see, at the end of Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, he discovered that he was a comic book character. So in order to truly kill himself, he would need to travel through the multiverse to all of the inspirations for his character and murder all of them. So he goes through a lot of classic novels. We did the story a long time ago, but it was relatively short. And with our newer style, I wanted to redo it for you guys as a full story today. 1850. The waves rocking gently as Deadpool readies his harpoon, his small wooden boat adrift on the vast sea. There comes a time in everyone's life when they realize what I've come to know. We're gonna need a bigger boat, he tells himself, when suddenly the waters behind him break and Deadpool stands to see what is coming. Here we go! This is the big guy, Moby Dick! And me in a dinghy, he shouts as the massive whale crests the waters. The metaphor isn't lost on me, he says before the mighty whale knocks his boat aside, sending Deadpool into the waters. He tries to paddle away, but the great beast swallows him whole. Elsewhere in the multiverse, 163 years later, 5 days ago, New York is in shambles. Fires rage and ruins lay scattered around, with the Baxter Building interiors covered in blood, scattered bodies cluttering the halls. Within his base of operations, Deadpool sits among the countless bodies of fallen heroes. The end is near, he quietly whispers to himself in the darkness, and as he looks around at the bodies of heroes from across the multiverse, he realizes something. It's never going to be over. I kill and I kill and I kill, but it's never enough. There's always another Spider-Man or another Captain America or another Captain Marvel. He sighs as he looks at the pile of Spider-Men, and finally he pulls out his revolver, putting it to his head. I wonder, you think after everything I've done, they'd let me die? He asks the dark voice. Pull the trigger and find out, the voice whispers in his head. Maybe you can rest at last. It's more likely you'll heal though, or be cloned, or go into some larval state until you emerge again, or be raised through black magic, the voice says as it rattles off ways of resurrecting Deadpool. I get it. He stands walking down the dark halls of the Baxter Building as the voice reminds him that the only way to end this is to find the source of it all and kill it. All right, plan B. Deadpool says as he opens up the door to his prison, stepping into a room full of evil scientists from across the multiverse. Good evening, Mad Scientist Brigade! What nastiness has my think tank cooked up for me today? He shouts to the gathering, and the Mad Thinker steps forward telling Deadpool that he thinks that he'll be pleased. Well, I've got a lot of people to kill in a short attention span. The real me. Deadpool tells him, with the Mad Thinker nodding and beginning to run down their hypothesis, that all of them are merely fictional non-entities and character concepts created by the progenitor species for their own amusement, trapped in an endless cycle of continuity. But Deadpool has become self-aware and can see through the veil of creation it is trying to free everyone. However, even now, he is merely trapped in a cycle of endless killing and hunting. But we've discovered a hidden metaverse. It is believed that those within represent earlier works of fiction, the classics if you will, the Mad Thinker says with an evil smile, but Deadpool stares at him. So the Mad Thinker continues, explaining that those within this metaverse serve as an inspiration for the heroes and villains that Deadpool is still hunting. If we kill the inspiration, the heroes will cease to exist, the voice in Deadpool's head finishes. Ooh, I like it, Deadpool tells them, and then he shakes his head. But this means I'll have to do one thing I never wanted to do. It means going to the one place that I feared. The New York Public Library. Deadpool throws aside another of the classics, his brain hurting as he shakes his head, admitting that he would rather kill Spider-Man 1,000,000 more times. There's really only one thing to do. So Deadpool smiles wide enough that we can see it through his mask. I know. Kill them all! He returns to the Baxter Building, and the scientists show him the nexus of all realities that they've built within it. And the Mad Thinker gives him a wristband that will allow him to jump into the metaverse. You did good, Doc. Y'all did good. I'm glad I left you alive. I left a present for you while I'm gone, he tells them as he claps them on the back. For now, do your worst, Doc, and I'll do mine. he tells them as he steps through the portal, but as he leaves, the scientists begin to move into high gear, revealing the strange devices that they've created. They have to move quickly as they don't know what Deadpool tampering with the metaverse will do to them. What we do now is going to make us heroes, the Mad Thinker tells them as he sends the devices into the metaverse. As he throws the last one into the portal, a voice interrupts him. Time for your parting gift, the Deadpool robot shouts as they move through the group, their buzzsaw arms cutting through the scientists quickly. You've all been working so hard, who wants a back rub? They shout as blood flies and the villains scream. Deadpool, meanwhile, drops out of the portal, landing hard on the ground of La Mancha, Spain, 1610. Alright, let's figure out where I am and who has to die! But at that moment, a lance plunges him in the chest as he looks up, seeing Don Quixote, the knight carrying him forward on horseback as the lance plunges deeper. You know, I kinda hate that you had to be first. You, I like. Deadpool gasps as he grabs the lance. How can it be? Is this some sorcerer's game that allows the goblin to speak even as I dry the color of its blood off my banner? Don Quixote shouts in shock, and Deadpool slides down the lance, pulling out his katana, slicing Don Quixote in the face, cutting out his eye. The man screams as the horse falls and they both land on the ground. He begins to try and crawl away, praying to God to restore his sight. But Deadpool pulls out a pistol, shooting the knight in the head. Don't worry, pal. When it comes to impractical pursuits, I got you covered. He looks up in time to see Sancho Panza staring at him in fear. Who are you? On second thought, never mind, Deadpool says as he shoots Sancho off his horse. 1850, aboard the Pequod, the spotter shouts at the sight of a great white whale. Captain Ahab orders the boat about, telling his men to ready their harpoons and stab the beast deep. But he's shocked to discover that the monster is already dead, floating on top of the ocean. They all stare in disgust as blood begins to pour out of its blowhole, and Deadpool pulls himself free. Hacking through bone and sinew, gulping down stomach acid by the mouthful, crawling out of a dead whale's blowhole. Guess I can cross that off my bucket list, he gasps, and the crew shout and cheer as they pull the strange man onto their boat. Deadpool thanks them as he flops onto the deck, staring down at his knife, which pierces through the head of Pinocchio. Wait a minute, where'd I pick up this guy? Deadpool whispers to himself, realizing that he doesn't remember doing that, but the image shifts and he sees that his knife is sticking out of the head of Vision. Huh? That was different, he says as the image shifts back, and Captain Ahab steps forward, demanding to know who Deadpool is. Call me Ishmael, he says as he stares out at the sea. But the real Ishmael steps forward, surprised that Deadpool shares his name. Really? Let's see what else we have in common. For instance, I have a knife in my hand, and you have one in your ribs. Deadpool shouts as he leaps forward, stabbing the man. The crew shifts as Deadpool whirls around on them. All right, sailors, let's get it on! He snarls as he hacks and slashes his way through. Meanwhile, in London, 1895, Sherlock Holmes looks down at the strange device that showed up in the storm that recently rocked London. He looks at the inspector, agreeing that this technology is not of their world. It's a message, my dear inspector. The game is afoot, he says with a smile. Later in his study, Holmes is playing through the message from the Mad Thinker. The man admits to having sent Deadpool through the metaverse, but not as a show of aggression, but merely because they could not defeat him in their world. If he destroys you, he destroys every interaction of his prey, the Mad Thinker explains, and he finally says that he sent these warnings out in hope that someone could find a way to stop Deadpool. Meanwhile, back aboard the Pequod, Deadpool continues to slice through Captain Ahab's crew, but he turns, seeing the captain trying to quietly escape. I already killed the big thorn in your side. Your life's work is done. The least you could do is give me a high five before I cut your heart out. Deadpool shouts at him as he tosses aside more of the crew. But before his eyes, Ahab suddenly shifts to become General Ross. He's changing, the voice in Deadpool's head tells him. You know what this means? Deadpool says to the voice as he leaps forward, stabbing Ahab. It's working. The voice agrees, but as Deadpool stands over the captain, preparing to deliver the final killing blow, the ocean trembles, and a massive submarine breaks the surface, destroying the Pequod, throwing everyone into the water. Ahab tries to paddle away, but Deadpool is quickly pursuing. That's the Nautilus. It shouldn't even be here, the voice in his head says as they both look at the submarine. Tentacles rear out of the water, pulling Ahab clear while ripping Deadpool out of the water himself. You know, for a classic modern literature, this is all the markings of X-rated anime. Deadpool notes as he swings through the air, sharp and pointy tentacles diving towards him. But he hits the button on his wrist controller, phasing away. Sorry guys, I'll have to catch old Ahab later. For now, let's go find some low-hanging fruit. He appears in St. Petersburg, Missouri, where Tom Sawyer is trying to convince his friends about how much fun it is to paint a fence. He almost has them too, but everyone is subtly distracted by the oddly dressed man that they see walking up the lane. The sword flashes through the air and the fence is painted with Tom's blood. Transylvania, Deadpool walks away from the darkness of Dracula's castle, the heads of the master vampire and his brides clutched in his hand. So that's it. In one fell swoop, I just killed all the vampires from our world. Dracula, Morbius, Baron Blood, and Blade, he says to the voice. That's the theory. It agrees, but also points out that he might have destroyed all of those associated with the vampires as well. Deadpool nods as he throws the heads away, reminding the voice that they could set off a chain reaction that even kills him. That's how you'll know you've won, the voice tells him as Deadpool hits the button on the wrist controller. Next, they appear in a dark forest, and Deadpool is mildly confused, when suddenly the Ghost Rider appears, knocking Deadpool to the ground. What's a demon-possessed redneck like you doing in a place like this? Deadpool questions, but the image shifts and he finds that it's actually the Headless Horseman that rides before him. The Spectre cackles, throwing his pumpkin, knocking Deadpool back to the ground, and for a brief moment he shifts again and it's the Green Goblin standing before Wade. Wade stands up, slashing the Spectre's horse, throwing him to the ground. Wait! A voice calls from the rider's body, with Deadpool pulling the rider's cloak aside to discover the man within. The rider explains that he was waiting for someone and didn't think that he would see a real monster. Don't worry, I'm no monster. I'm a genie in a bottle. And you wanted to be a Headless Horseman, right? Wish granted, Deadpool says as he brings down his sword, leaving the man's severed head with candles burning inside it. Very festive. Concord, Massachusetts, Deadpool tries to sneak into a house, but he's met by the Little Women. They each beat him to the ground until one slices off his finger, and for a moment, images of Mockingbird, Black Widow, She-Hulk, and Elektra appear. Deadpool lies on the floor in a pool of his own blood. I was saving this for a special occasion, but you girls are really pissing me off, he gasps as he pulls a pin from his grenade and the whole house explodes. As it crawls away from the destruction, his body knitting itself back together, Deadpool groans to the voice in his head. I don't get it. I've killed Spider-Man, Avengers, X-Men. Is it just me or should I be having an easier time with the dusty classics? So he finally decides that if he's going to kill an entire metaverse, he won't be able to do it alone. Meanwhile, back at the home of Sherlock Holmes, the man looks up at those that he's gathered. Using Mr. Wells' fantastic machine to travel through realities, he has gathered these heroes for a most drastic mission. We'll root him out and see his fiendishness undone, Holmes tells them as he looks at the heroes. Beowulf the Monster Hunter, the Tracker Natty Bumpo, the Warrior Hua Mulan, and Mr. Watson. It's a murderer that we must apprehend, my friends, and nothing else than the whole of existence is at stake. Meanwhile, back in the metaverse, Ebenezer Scrooge looks over his shoulder, the cold and dismal cemetery before him as he asks the ghost of Christmas future what he shows him. But over his shoulder is Deadpool, who motions to the dead ghost behind him. What, tall, dark, and ghostly didn't tell you that your funeral was going to be of the closed casket variety? Deadpool explains as he raises his pistol. Elsewhere, lightning flashes and the body twitches, with Frankenstein laughing as his monster is brought to life. It's alive! He shouts with joy, but the sheets are lifted and the monster reaches out for him, wrapping its massive hand around Dr. Frankenstein's throat. The monster stares at him before throwing him away, crashing through the tables and instruments. What is happening? Frankenstein asks as he struggles to his feet. The creature's brain. Abnormal? He turns to Igor, trying to find his assistant and ask where he got the brain from. But Deadpool is the one who greets him, standing by the newly risen monster. Sorry, Doc, old Igor is lying down on the job, meaning I killed him. And the brain that he took for your experiment? A whole bunch of mine. Dug it out myself using a spork, Deadpool tells him as he taps the back of his head. The monster moves forward, grabbing Dr. Frankenstein by the neck, lifting him into the air. The image then shifts, and it's the jackal being held off the ground, and the monster snaps his neck with a single shift. Ah, so that's what it feels like to do the dirty work yourself. How liberating. The evil voice from Deadpool's head now coming out of the monster's lips, and he smiles. Meanwhile, Holmes and his team continue to follow Deadpool's trail. They've managed to find the island of Dr. Monroe, and they discovered it to be a graveyard of animalistic corpses. When they went to Lilliput, cats feast on the bodies of the tiny people. Gulliver, nowhere in sight. Rome, bodies are scattered everywhere. With each new scene, Holmes begins to forget. He knows some of them, or knows that he should know some of them, but the places and the faces of the dead begin to escape him, adrift in his mind. Holmes, the murderer. You said he was working alone, but there is someone with him. Natty explains to their leader. Holmes nods, explaining that he believes Deadpool to be quite mad. What a ghastly turn of events if someone found a way to give his other personality physical form. Haste, my friends, we must make haste! Meanwhile, over in India, Deadpool finishes stabbing the snake that tried to wrap around him, and with the monster nearby standing on a dead elephant. These creatures should not be taken lightly. Their stories are filled with violence and death. The monster reminds him as Deadpool continues to joke about talking cartoons. Bagheera and Mowgli leap from the bushes with a roar, the panther leaping at Deadpool, knocking him to the ground as Mowgli rushes the monster. You're a big one, aren't you? Luckily, you and your master have angered all the beasts of the jungle, and we are not alone! Mowgli says with a smile as Baloo rushes out of the jungle, attacking the monsters, knocking him to the ground with his claws. This monster reeks of death! Smells don't lie! It shouldn't be walking! I'll tear it down! Bury it again! The mighty bear roars. As Bagheera continues to slash at his body, the image shifts and Deadpool sees Khazar and Zabu. But Deadpool reveals the truth to them. I am planning on killing you, but you got it wrong if you think I'm working alone, he tells the boy. And at that moment, Shere Khan collides with Mowgli, taking the boy away. The monster also knocks Baloo away into a tree. Bagheera stands over the body of his fallen friend, and the body of the great tiger slumped over the corpse. It cannot be. We've had so many more stories to tell. But Deadpool is behind him, his knife at the great cat's throat. Don't worry, when I'm done, there won't be any stories to tell. Meanwhile, over in the Caribbean Sea in 1754, the Little Mermaid leads the Nautilus through the murky ocean, locating the crashed Hispaniola. Captain Nemo looks at his guest, Captain Ahab, as he explains that the Hispaniola predates his ship by a century. But Ahab looks at him, pointing out that Nemo's own ship is from a different time. Somehow, the building blocks of time and space are beginning to crumble. What once existed in several different time periods now exists in one. Something has entered our world, an anomaly, a cancer, that is rotting existence itself. We must find this malignancy and cut it out before the damage is done. Nemo tells his new friend and he turns back to the crew, ordering them to the surface to search for survivors. They arrive with 2 of them, though they admit that they won't last long, and Nemo nods, ordering the men be brought to him. Those men are gutless pirates from the look of them. We would have been better off leaving them to the gulls, Ahab snaps at Nemo. But Nemo waves him off, explaining that he believes the same man that attacked the Pequod is the one who attacked the Hispaniola. What? What if it was the same cutthroat? Then what? Ahab asks. Then we'll be one step closer to finding him, Nemo tells his friend. But suddenly the monster opens up its eyes from where he lays on the deck, smiling. Don't worry about finding us. He grins. We've already found you! Deadpool snarls as he stands, his swords flashing, killing the crew. He rushes forward, running Ahab through, and then he leaps forward, knocking Nemo to the deck, bringing his swords to the captain's throat. Almighty God, enough! Nemo growls, and the image shifts as he finds it to be Magneto beneath Deadpool's blades. Afraid not, Deadpool tells the captain as he stands up. The Little Mermaid swims outside, and the image shifts, and it's Namor in the murky depths. She turns in shock as the torpedo doors open and a torpedo is launched. Captain Nemo strapped to the side of it, with the explosion ripping through the ocean, killing the captain and the Little Mermaid. Did you see that? The Little Mermaid? Namor? What I wouldn't give to see the submariner's face when he found out that he was inspired by the Little Mermaid. Guess I won't get a chance, though. Just like that, Namor doesn't exist anymore, he says as he turns his back to the monster and then rushes to the deck. Now we gotta get control of this sub. It's time to go after some big game. He shouts as he steers the tub towards the massive Greek monsters, Scylla and Charybdis. And with that, the deaths continue. The 3 witches of Macbeth are boiled in their own cauldron. A man is shot at his door as raven feathers around him as he quotes nevermore. A great cockroach in a bed killed by a hatchet. With each scene, each story, Sherlock Holmes continues to forget where they came from. Works of fiction have begun to disappear from his mind. The fabric of the metaverse is torn asunder. The great beasts have been killed. The Nautilus detonated to destroy them and the likes of the Odyssey. And Deadpool and his monster appear in a flash of light. Paris, 1627. The citizens are scared, shocked by the monsters that have appeared before them. But Deadpool's monster merely growls at them. Are you feeling alright, buddy? Deadpool asks his friend, but they're interrupted as the voices call to them from behind. The pair turn, finding a group of musketeers before them. Whoever you are, you will not terrorize the citizens of our fair Paris. You might be brave when it comes to attacking harmless townsfolk, but now you face Athos, Aramis, Porthos, and D'Artagnan, the musketeers tell him. Deadpool nods and turns to the monster, drawing the sword from his back. Actually, I'm glad you guys showed up. I've got a bone to pick with you, he says as he turns and leaps at them. What kind of candy bar doesn't have nuts in it? He shouts with anger. He leaps into the fight with the musketeers as his monster roars and snaps the neck of the closest one. Again with the unintelligible roaring? Where's the charm? Where's the sass? Deadpool asks, but as he takes his eyes from the musketeers for a moment, he receives a rapier through the head, hitting the ground, and he begins to babble incoherently. He sees it. The universe. The heroes are dying off, folding on themselves and becoming something new, only to be destroyed again. Pretty soon, there will be nothing left, and then I'll be gone too. But if I never existed, I never started down this path. He gasps to himself as he sees a musketeer standing over him. I don't know how you're still alive, but yield, the musketeer orders. Deadpool moves fast, stabbing the man in the throat. I'm still alive because it's not working, he growls in anger. No fair! I'm not the only one with a healing factor, am I? He snaps as he looks around at all of the dead musketeers and civilians around him. And he finally looks at his monster, admitting that they just killed the very idea of a team. But someone is peeing in the punch bowl, and you're the walking, talking proof of that, he says to his now stupider friend. What's wrong with me? The monster grunts as he slaps himself in the head, but arrows are suddenly shot through the air, hitting him in the chest. Let me guess, you're the cavalry? Deadpool asks as he turns to see Holmes and his team. Holmes looks at him. I can tell by your stance, the shift in your eyes, the tensing of your muscles, that you know who I am. But your petty verbal jabs betray your fear. We have traveled a long way to catch up with you, but this game ends here. Deadpool simply looks at him. Sick of monster me! And the two of them launch themselves at the heroes. Deadpool fights against Bumpo, his sword clashing against the tracker's hatchet as the monster faces off against Beowulf, but the great warrior tears the arm from the monster's body after he buries his blade in his chest. I'll send you back to the corpse pile, beast! Watson and Holmes stand by patiently, with Watson holding his pistol, questioning if they should help. Patience, dear Watson. Our allies have the battle well in hand, and our moment will present itself. The monster headbutts Beowulf again and again, but as he rears back, Watson's pistol thunders, blowing the back of the monster's head off. Bravo, Watson! That was your moment and you seized it. Now to seize mine, Holmes tells his friend, and Deadpool screams in pain as the voice is once again appearing in his mind. Good to be home. Miss me? Deadpool twirls, throwing Natty onto Mulan's blade, and as they fall, she apologizes to her friend, but the tracker shakes her head, telling her to stop Deadpool. Deadpool turns away, activating his wrist controller to teleport once again, as the voice explains to him that the Ideaverse is trying to heal itself. But it can't keep up with us, the voice explains, but before they disappear, Mulan rushes forward, slashing off Deadpool's hand. Look what you did! He angrily shouts as he grabs his stump. The time machine, they adjusted it so they could follow us, the voice tells him as he turns to see H.G. Wells' time machine. Deadpool jumps onto the machine, listening to the voice and just randomly hitting buttons and levers. Not so fast, Holmes shouts as he jumps onto the machine, punching out at Deadpool as they both disappear. They're gone, Mulan gasps as she reaches out to where Holmes stood mere moments ago. I believe that was his moment, Watson says with a quiet nod. Meanwhile, in the nexus of realities, Holmes chops Deadpool in the throat. You've lost, Deadpool. Your murder spree is done. You've caused reality to collapse on itself. Different stories are falling in on each other, and once you're gone, the Ideaverse can heal. He snaps in the murk, but Deadpool shakes his head. I thought you were the smart one. It's okay. Took me a while to figure it out myself. I don't need to kill everyone. I just need to plant the seed. Holmes grits his teeth, pushing Deadpool off the machine, but the merc manages to hold on. I planted the seed. The greatest stories ever told, I killed them. And they bought it. He shouts as he motions to the ghostly spectators that seem to be watching the Ideaverse. Deadpool smiles, explaining that it will never heal back correctly. That it'll be like bones that don't set right. Stories won't be the same. Heroes will kill and die. Deadpool's hand begins to tear at the wrist. Everything collapses. The ideas are weakening. They can't support themselves. It'll all start to vanish, he says as his wrist tears and he falls away, adrift in the ether. So that's it. I just float along and wait for the whimper? Deadpool asks the voice as he drifts through the multitude of lights in the Ideaverse. That's the idea. The Ideaverse is mortally wounded. Once the ideas die, so do the ideas that they spawn, and the rest will follow. Will follow, the voice tells him quietly. Deadpool sighs, looking at everything around him. End of everything. It's kind of pretty. On the machine, Holmes taps his head. He knows that this is his moment. He just has to remember. Keep the ideas alive. Set the bone. Keep them alive and remember. He tells himself as he reaches for the controls. And there you have it, Deadpool Killustrated in our newer style. The full story, all of the parts of the storyline that came out. But there is 2 more parts to this Deadpool Kills series, I guess? We gotta do Deadpool Kills Deadpool and then Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe again. We're gonna be doing all of these right here on the channel, so make sure you hit subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on your notifications. And don't forget, you can get early access to our videos if you go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian. Thank you so much for your continued support, and I'll see you next time right here